Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So it's been quite a while since I've made a build video, but Lightfall has released and we have access to all of Strand now. So I'm going to be making my first Strand build, which focuses on Warlock, on Broodweaver, and the whole premise of the build is to build around the Threadlings, which are a new Strand mechanic, I guess you could say, where you create little minions, pretty much. And the great thing about Broodweaver is most of their kit is built around the Threadlings. So I wanted to utilize them as much as possible in this build and make them really powerful and make sure that you have as many as you can get. Starting off, the exotic of choice is the Swarmers. These are brand new. You can get these after the Legendary campaign for free. The role that you get, this is the role that you get from the Legendary campaign, the stock role. It's already good enough as it is, so you don't really need to farm any more. But if you do want to farm some, then just go for Resi, Recurve, and Dis. And yeah, that's pretty much that. Basically what they do is that destroying Tangles will spawn Threadlings, which are little minions, and the Threadlings will unravel targets, which the best way to explain unraveling is Outbreak Prime, or Outbreak Perfected. You know, when you're just wailing on an enemy and you got the little SIVA nanites coming out of the enemy and then going back into them and doing damage. That's kind of what unraveling is. There's like little strands that come out of enemies and go back into them and do damage. So, honestly, that is, by default, very powerful. You've already got a new way of making Threadlings, and they unravel targets, which is really strong right now, actually. So, this is great. That's the exotic. Very easy to get if you don't have it already. And the role, by default, is very good. So, that's great. Now for the subclass, Broodweaver. There's a lot you could do with this. I am going to give you a lot of different recommendations for fragments as well, because the ones that I'm using may not be what you want to use. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do, especially with Strand Weapons. So let's get into this. Of course, these three up here, just leave this as it is. You can use Empower and Rift if you want, but Healing Rift is just really nice because there isn't much healing in Strand, so it's nice to have a Healing Rift. The grenade of choice is going to be the Threadling grenade. By default, the Threadling grenade, when thrown, will spawn 3 Threadlings, which is pretty good. But with the aspect, Mindspun Invocation, you can actually consume the grenade, kind of like a Devour nade or whatever, whatever other nade. There's a lot of nades you can consume on Warlock. And you can basically consume the nade and you'll get 5 perched Threadlings for free. So instead of the regular 3 that you would get from the actual nade itself, you get 5 automatically just around you, waiting to be used on enemies, which is really good. So you could pop this at any time and just have them there ready for when you actually reach enemies if you aren't already around enemies, which is really, really good. So this is definitely recommended. Have the Threadling grenades and obviously use this aspect. There aren't any other aspects to choose, so you're going to have this on anyway. And then the other aspect we have here is Weaver's Call, which is when you cast your Rift, you get 3 Threadlings as well. So we already have 3 sources of Threadlings, which is great. And this is why I'm building around them so much, because it's pretty much all Warlock has, I'm not going to lie. At least at the moment. So yeah, this is already great. The Threadlings are quite strong, and you can make them stronger. And they're also just very fun in general. And because of how easy they are to get and how many you can spam, you really don't have to worry about being in combat. You can just kind of relax, and let the Threadlings do the job. So that's really good. Now for the fragments, a lot of this stuff is optional. But the main 3 I do recommend is Thread of Evolution, Thread of Generation, and Thread of Binding. Now the reason why you want Thread of Evolution is because it buffs the damage of the Threadlings, and they travel further. Then we have Thread of Generation, which is dealing damage, generates grenade energy. Of course, one of our main sources of the Threadlings is through the Threadling grenade. So having access to more grenade energy for just doing damage is insane. I'm not sure the actual numbers of how much % this gives per, each damage source. But it feels pretty good. You get grenades really fast. So this is great. And then I have Thread of Binding, which is super final blows emit a suspending burst from the target. The reason why this is nice is because Suspend is pretty strong right now, and Warlocks by default don't have access to Suspend. So I wanted to throw in a little bit of Suspend to make the super not only better, but give you access to Suspend in some way. You can swap this out if you want, you don't have to have this. But it is nice to pair with the extra Threadling damage, because the super drops Threadlings. So not only will the super do more damage by default, but it will now also suspend enemies, which is good for anything that somehow survives. Finally, I have Thread of Finality, which is finish your final blows, create Threadlings. Personally, I don't finish it that much, I just have it here as an extra option for Threadlings, but you can swap this out along with Thread of Binding. There are a lot of things you can do. Picking up an Orb of Power grants Woven Mail. This is absolutely phenomenal. Woven Mail is a 60% DR increase. It lasts 10 seconds, and any orb you pick up will refresh that timer. So, theoretically, you could become mostly unkillable with Woven Mail. It is extremely strong. And yeah, you can very safely swap out one of these two fragments for that if you really want to. Because it's just free DR. Otherwise, I recommend just having things that can either make orbs or can benefit from Strand Weapons. I know a lot of people aren't really a fan of the Strand Weapons right now. Me personally too, I am in the same boat. They feel really bad because they're all really bad archetypes. But, you know, it is what it is. Eventually we will get better, you know, Strand Weapons. So right now, this is kind of what we have. You can use whatever you like in the rest of the slots. It is completely up to you. But these are the 4 that I'm running right now because most of it benefits Threadlings, you know, and that's kind of what we're here for. So this is pretty nice. Okay, so loadout and mods. Straight up, you don't have to use a Strand Weapon in this build. I've basically, you know, built around it not requiring a Strand Weapon. However, if you do use a Strand Weapon, you can reap the benefits of the artifact mods, which are very powerful. We have Untangler here, which is destroying a tangle with a Strand Weapon suspends targets. That's really helpful. We have Rapid Final Blows with a Strand Weapon grants your weapon unraveling rounds, also really strong. And then we have Destroying a Tangle with a Strand Weapon creates a larger or more damaging explosion. These are all very good things, and they do help the build quite a lot, because, you know, Tangles, when you destroy Tangles, we make Threadlings. So suspending enemies and doing more damage with the Tangles is essentially going to make the Threadlings easier to do their job. You know, they're going to be able to do their job much easier with that, which is really nice. But again, you don't actually have to use a Strand Weapon if you don't want to. Personally, I just like running Osteo. I'm building around the idea of, you know, just using whatever you like, so keep that in mind. However, if you do want to use a Strand Weapon, there are plenty of things you can use. Final Warning, you know, Synchronic Roulette, for example. It's not a very good gun. None of the Strand Weapons right now are very good. But it does have Hatchling, which is a new perk, where if you get Precision Final Blows, or you rapidly defeat targets with non-precision, you know, kills, you get a Threadling, which is another source of a Threadling, so it is really nice. However, the guns suck. Alright, so for the juicy part, mods. Unfortunately, Bungie has completely gutted build crafting in Lightfall. This is the worst builds have ever been, I'm not even gonna lie. But, you know, we're gonna make do with what we've got, so this is what I'm running. I am running an ammo finder and a scout, because these are very powerful, and I'm also running a siphon. Of course, I am using a kinetic weapon right now, so I'm using kinetic siphon. You need orbs. You have to have some kind of orb generation, otherwise the build will not work, since, you know, the new mods rely on armor charges, and to get armor charges you need to pick up orbs, so you will have to have some kind of orb generating mod in here. I recommend a siphon, it's the easiest one to run with. If you are using a Strand Weapon, it's good to have the dual siphons, otherwise get the one cost siphon mods in the artifact to turn Strand Siphon into a one cost, so you can have other things in here. Unfortunately, Ashes to Assets does not work on the Threadling Grenade if you consume it. Dynamo is disabled, which would have been pretty nice. Hands-on is not bad, you can run hands-on if you like. Power Preservation, again, is not that bad either. But otherwise, there is nothing else to run in here, so just run, you know, Finders, really, and a Siphon of your choice. As for the rest of the mods, it's pretty much just ability regen. Again, as mentioned, if you consume the grenade, it does not count as a grenade anymore, so things like Firepower, Momentum Transfer, and Bolstering Detonation do not work anymore. I have decided not to spec into grenade abilities, you know, like things that reduce grenade recharge time, because no need. The fragment that I mentioned earlier, where doing damage gives you grenade energy, is completely busted, and you will get your grenades back very, very quickly without any form of regen. So that's really nice. So this is what we're running, just basically ways of getting a little bit of grenade energy back. but mostly class ability, since that's a pretty important part. Because that's what's going to be sending out the 10 Threadlings, and of course, you want to be able to chain your abilities quite well. I did spec into Grenade at one point when I was making this build, in the early version of it, and I was not getting... I basically never had a Rift, so yeah. And, you know, the Fragment was so strong that I didn't need to spec into Grenades anyway. Aside from ability stuff, though, we just have charges, really. Charged Up, which increases your armor charge maximum stacks by 1 per mod. So with 2 of them, I have a maximum of 5 stacks, which with kickstarts does about 50% energy, which is pretty nice, so yeah. Otherwise, if you don't want that and you want to just run the regular 3 charges, you can have, you know, obviously resistances, since they are very strong. And that's about it. Or you could have reserves. Nothing else really is going to do much. So, yeah. Then in my boots, I have stacks and stacks so I can get armor charges faster. And I have orbs. Picking up orbs gives me health, which is really nice, since aside from the Rift, we have no form of healing. And then I have Invigoration, which is going to give me melee ability energy when I pick up an orb as well. And then finally, in my Bond, I have double utility kickstart to get my Rift back a bit faster, and then Bomber. You can run Outreach if you want to get melee back, which of course melee will then charge your class ability and a little bit of grenade energy. So, you know, you could do that, but I've just gone with Bomber because, I mean, why not? I don't know. It's just whatever you want to do. You can't really spec into anything else like this because it costs 3 armor charges, which is, it just sucks. Like, the builds just suck. I'm not going to lie. They just suck. It's really, really sad. But, yeah, this is pretty much it. If you want to just copy this, go right ahead. Again, Resi, Recov, Dis is kind of what you want. Resi, because it's broken, and then Recov and Dis for Threadlings. So, yeah, that's pretty much the build. Hope you enjoy this. I'll have a little bit of gameplay at the end. It won't be too long, because this video is already too long as itself. So, yeah, just enjoy whatever I put at the end, and let me know what you think of the build. Thanks for watching, and adios.